Hi, we continue with section 5.5 and we saw how to create the inverse trig functions. So we found we actually saw the inverse functions for sine. So sine inverse x, or written as y is equal to sine inverse x, or y is equal to arc sine x. So this will be the inverse function, and we had the cosine inverse x, or y is equal to arc cosine x, and then the tangent one, y is equal to tangent inverse x, or y is equal to arc tan x. So let me read it as arc tangent of x. So these are the inverse functions, and rewrite it straighter, or y is equal to arc tan of x. Okay, but remember, what is important here is that you have to remember their domains and ranges. So I will write that in a few minutes again, but notice here we saw 3 examples for each of these. Let me go up here. So we started with the sine function. So here we looked at what is sine inverse 1/2, then what is sine inverse square root of 2 over 2, and then we had a sine inverse of 0. So both these values here and here, these are positive values. But what if we have some negative value? Then what will happen? So let me show you that, but let's now see cosine also. We looked at the positive values, 2 positive values, and then we have a 0 value. Similarly, for the tangent, we have 2 positive values in here, and then 1 0 value. So notice here that if x is greater than 0, in other words, if x is positive, the answer of sine inverse x, cosine inverse x, and tangent inverse x will always be in the first quadrant. So it will be a value in the first quadrant, or you can say a value whose what is it, terminal point is in the first quadrant. Okay, so I'm calling it the angle because that's what it is going to be eventually. In chapter 6 you will notice. So we are calling this an angle now. So this we can say this angle is pi over 6. First we were not using the word, and we were just taking this line. We were saying this line represents pi over 6, this line represents pi over 2, and so on. But now we will see this angle is pi over 2, and so on. Now if we have 0, then it can be on one of the lines, one of the axes. But if x is less than 0, then the answer for sine inverse and tangent inverse will be in the fourth quadrant, because it will be an angle between negative pi over 2 to 0. Now why do we say that? I'll explain in a minute. But one more thing, that if the answer for cosine inverse, if x is less than 0, then cosine inverse x will be an angle between pi over 2 and pi. So it will be in the second quadrant. So it will be here. Okay, so why is that happening? Because remember, we are looking for inverse sine and inverse tangent. We are looking for a value between negative 2 pi over 2 and pi over 2. Okay, so we are looking between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So this is our range in which we are trying to look for the value. So for sine inverse x, if x is positive, I can make a small table here for you guys. Again, it's just that you can not like memorize. You will have to either memorize the table or you can just go with the flow. Okay, so let's look what happens if you have negative values in there. So now it says find each value, find the exact value of each expression. What exact value means that you have to, if it's pi over 3 or pi over 4, you are supposed to leave it like that, not take a calculator and take the value of pi to be 3.14. So your pi will remain as pi. So arc sine of negative 1. Okay? So it means we are looking for an x such that sine of x is equal to negative 1. So when will this happen? You can go to your table values, the table that I have asked you to memorize, this one. And maybe one more value here. So let's say these are the t values, and we are looking for sine of t, cosine of t, and then you can also have tangent of t. So if you remember this table, the values, then it should be easier. So if you recall, sine of t will be negative 1 when t is 3 pi over 2. Okay, t is 3 pi over 2. Now our answer, because we got this equation from the arc sine expression, so we cannot have a value outside the interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, because that is what the domain, the range of sine inverse is, sine inverse x is. So our angle, although you might come up with OX as 3 pi over 2, the position is correct. The position of the value should, the number that we are looking for is on this line, which is 3 pi over 2, but these have infinitely many names, so we will read it as not like this, but we will say x is equal to negative pi over 2, because this is also negative pi over 2 when you come from the 0 to this line, or going clockwise, you get a negative. So answer for this one will be negative pi over 2. Looking at the next one, so arc sine of negative square root of 3 over 2. So again you can call it x, so which means we are looking for x such that sine of x is equal to negative square root of 3 over 2. Again now sine is negative, so it means the value is in the third or the fourth quadrant, because below the x-axis sine of x is negative, but because we have to stay between negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, the answer will be negative pi over 3. Why negative pi over 3? Well, again, look at the unit circle. Remember the coordinates of pi over 3 are, the terminal point of pi over 3 is 1/2 comma square root of 3 over 2. And if I reflect this point about the x-axis, I arrive here, and the coordinates of this point will be just the same as the coordinates here, but only that the y coordinate will have a negative sign in front. because in this quadrant, in fourth quadrant, the x coordinate is positive and the y coordinate is negative. Remember, you can have a point here and will have a point here. The coordinates here will be negative 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. This one will be negative 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2, and you should know what each of these represent. Now, so in other words, we are basically looking at something like here. So if you recall, if you read this way, then the value will be 5 pi over 3. But 5 pi over 3 does not lie in the interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So we have to look in this direction. So the answer here will be that this value is equal to, this value here, x is equal to negative pi over 3. Looking at the last one here, so it says sine inverse is equal to 3 over 2. If you say this is x, then we are getting sine of x equals 3 over 2. So now, remember, this is a number greater than 1. So this is equal to 1.5, which is greater than 1. So this value does not exist. So now next one, so now we are looking at the cosine inverse of some negative values. Now, cosine inverse, if you recall again, lies in the interval that we need is from 0 to pi. So the answer for this and this will lie between 0 and pi. So here in the middle we have pi over 2. So anywhere in, so if you look at it like in the coordinates form, so it means we are saying the angle is over here between 0 and pi from the positive orientation of the. So try to look at it. Cosine inverse of 1/2. So in other words, you can call it x. Cosine of x is equal to negative 1/2. So I just had this thing up here. So can you see the cosine of negative cosine of this angle or this p value will have the cosine equal to negative 1/2. So what is that value? That is the 2 pi over 3. This is 2 pi over 3. So we will say that cos x is equal to 2 pi over 3. But now we check, are we reading it correctly? Are we saying it correctly? Because we have to make sure that the angle is between 0 and pi, which it is. So this is our answer. Now what about arc cosine of negative 2? So this means cosine of x equals negative 2, but negative 2 is a number which is less than negative 1. And remember, the cosine inverse has the domain from negative 1 to 1. So anything below negative 1 or anything above 1, we cannot find cosine inverse of that. Neither can we do sine inverse of that. Okay, so this will have no value or does not exist. Now cosine inverse of negative 1. So it means we are looking for an x. So we call it equal to x. In other words, the cosine of x is equal to negative 1. So when is the cosine negative 1? Again, you can go to that table if you have it in front of you. Otherwise, you have to recall. If you forgot, you have to check like some values here. So first we will check these 4 values. So if you immediately write your coordinates, you will see cosine, remember, is the x value. So where is which point, or where is the negative 1 for the x value? So we note it is over here, so which is the angle, or the t value is, or x value is pi. Why is it pi? Because remember, we are looking for angle in here. Tangent inverse of negative 3, so equal to x, which means tangent of x equals negative square root of 3. Now the tangent is negative in the first quadrant, so which means the answer to this one could be here or could be here. Okay, but since we want it to be in these two quadrants, so it must be, sorry, my bad, I got it wrong. It will be, tangent will be negative in the second and the third quadrant, second and the fourth. So answer can be here or here, but since it's negative, so it has to be in here, because an inverse tangent we are looking for in there. So then you can again go back to that table, this one, if you have it in front of you, you have filled it and you have practiced it and memorized it, then it will be easy to figure out what the answer is here. But again, remember, this is a negative value, so it will be in the quadrant 4. So it will be sine over, the tangent is sine over cosine. Okay, so sine should be square root of 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. This will give you square root of 3. If I have negative, so I can have negative there. So in the fourth quadrant, x is positive, y is negative. Okay, so we have that this happens when we have the angle pi over 3. So we read it as negative pi over 3. So the answer here will be x is equal to negative pi over 3. Okay. So then next one, arctangent of negative 1. Again, we can call it x. Again, I am calling each of them x, but you can call it t, you can call it theta, you can call it beta, alpha, whatever, any variable. Okay, so this will become then tangent of t equals to negative 1. So when is tangent negative 1? So remember, if tangent is sine over cosine, so it looks like the sine and cosine are same. And when does that happen? Then we have the angle pi over 4. But pi over 4 won't work here. Like if I say t is equal to pi over 4, that is not correct, because tangent of pi over 4 is 1, not negative 1. So it means we have to look for an angle which gives us a negative 1 tangent value. So it will be a multiple of pi, but it will be in the fourth quadrant. And again, if we read it from here, this is 5 pi over 4, but that is not going to be our answer here, because remember, if 5 pi over 4 is not in the interval negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So what do we do? So, but our reference point, our terminal point is over here, so we can read it from this direction, and we have it, t is equal to negative pi over 4. So last one here of this kind, so we are looking at tangent inverse of this quantity, which is x. So this is compare these two. Okay, this one is just square root of 3 with the negative sign in front, and here we have a square root of 3 over 3 with the negative in front. So again, the answer will be in the fourth quadrant, so x will be equal to negative pi over 6. Okay. The next thing we look at is what we call the inverse function property, and I think I will talk about this in the next video.